Can you hear that over the mic? Is it okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like a little miniature tambura. Quite nice for these purposes.
Wow. Very nice.
I actually with the delay over the Zoom, I think if you all just muted yourselves and then you can listen and then you can, I'll sing each line twice. You can sing with me the second time. But sometimes if we try to do it all together, it gets very messy because of the delay. So why don't you maybe go ahead and mute everybody, but please join me in chanting, okay? I'll chant and then you can say the second time with me. Jayura Madhava Kunja Bihari. Everybody. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balava Girvardhari Gopi Jana Balava Girvardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yama Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Ayurada Madhava Kunja Bihari Ayurada Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Everyone. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna, Jai Shri Shri Gauri, Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai. Vaishnav Sangha Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. All glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to the some devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru Garanga, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Padashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharne. So again, it's a pleasure, honor to be with everybody from Naperville Yatra. I know that special greetings to everyone. This is a very, very auspicious time. This is Kartik season. Yesterday was Diwali in most of our calendars. Today's Govardhan Puja. So Prabhupada said many times you become Krishna conscious as a festival every day. The Lord's Leela and his enjoyable, beautiful pastimes are there, going on eternally. So even in the midst of our material pressures and duties, and even in the midst of a global pandemic and economic difficulties, so many things, we'll talk more about that in a minute, but we take shelter of these beautiful festivals. And I know that things are moving forward nicely for development of a new temple in Naperville. I want to offer my thanks to all the devotees for your continued devotion and your service to the community, your dedication, your financial sacrifices. And please ask all of you for your continued prayers that we can finish this temple soon. Plans are there. You all know probably more about it than I do. Permission is coming from the city moving forward, and there will be additional sacrifices. Anytime you try to be big for Krishna, he usually uses that as an act to purify us. Just like Bhagavad Gita, it wasn't like, okay, Arjuna, I'll make all the other warriors lay down. It wasn't like that. He said, okay, now you understand my desire. Now you go out and fight. Armed with yoga, Arjuna, right? Stand and fight. So in a similar way, we are armed with the yoga of bhakti and the knowledge and devotion. So now we're also making efforts for Krishna. And we can expect things to be difficult. It's the nature of this world. If we try hard, then Krishna, he reciprocates with us. He helps us. So we have to apply our energies in that way. So looking forward to many milestones achieved in our development of this temple. And of course, remember, the temple itself is nice. It's wonderful to make temples, but that is not the Yuga Dharma. The Yuga Dharma is chanting the glories of the Lord and spreading Krishna consciousness, sharing in the mood of Prabhupada and Chaitanya, spreading Krishna's mercy. So we want a temple, not just so we can go there and be comfortable, hang out with our friends, have really wonderful prasadam. That's not the purpose. We want to have a beautiful temple because it'll attract people to come and hear about Krishna, to associate with devotees, and to make progress in their spiritual life. So looking forward to all the wonderful milestones in developing that temple. So today I believe we're reading from 1st Canto, chapter 9, text 46. That's what I was sent. So hopefully that's correct. And let's go ahead and jump in. This is a chapter entitled The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev. And I apologize in advance. I will have to leave right on the hour because I have another scheduled meeting that was planned ahead of time. So we'll try to be, we'll try to stick right to that schedule. And if need be, happy to come back and give another class in the future for more conversation. So text 46. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Sanskrit. Tasya nirhasvanadini sampade tasya bhargava yudhishthira karayitva murhurtam dukito bhavat. I'm not sure how you usually do it. Someone out there want to chant? Welcome, D. You can unmute yourself. Someone wants to chant the verse if you have it there. Just connecting down there, whoever A is. Somebody wants to chant?
Tasya nirhara nadhini samparte tasya bhargava yudhishthira karayitva muhurtam dukkito bhavat.
Thank you, Prabhu. One of the ladies want to chant? Prabhupada would always invite the ladies to chant.
Tasya nirharanadini sampare tasya bhagava yudhishthira karayitva muhurtam dukkito bhavat.
Thank you very much. So word meanings, tasya, his. Let's see, I'll just read it through because sometimes the delay on Zoom makes it difficult. Tasya, his. You can do it with me if you've got a book in front of you. Nirharanta adini, funeral ceremony. Sampare tasya, of the dead body. Bhargava, old descendant of Brigu. Yudhishthira, Maharaj Yudhishthir. Kariyitva, having performed it. Muhurtam, for a moment. Dukkitaha, sorry. Abhavat, became. Translation. O descendant of Brigu, Shonaka, after performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishma Dev, Maharaj Yudhishthir was momentarily overtaken with grief. You can try to repeat it together if you like. I don't know how the delay works, but if you have the verse there, you can repeat it with me. O descendant of Brigu, Shonaka, after performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishma Dev, Maharaj Yudhishthir was momentarily overtaken with grief. Interesting. Maharaj Yudhishthir, great pure devotee of the Lord, overtaken with grief. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Bhishma Dev was not only a great family head of Maharaj Yudhishthir, but also he was a great philosopher and friend to him, his brothers, and his mother. Since Maharaj Pandu, the father of the 5 brothers headed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, had died, Bhishma Dev was the most affectionate grandfather of the Pandavas and caretaker of the widow, daughter-in-law, Kunti Devi. Although Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the elder uncle of Maharaj Yudhishthira, was there to look after them, his affection was more on the side of his 100 sons, headed by Duryodhana. Prabhupada's understating that, isn't he? Says, although Dhritarashtra Maharaj was there to look after them, his affection was more on the side of the 100 sons, his 100 sons, headed by Duryodhana. Ultimately, a colossal clique was fabricated to deprive the 5 fatherless brothers of the rightful claim of the kingdom of Hastinapur. There was great intrigue, common in imperial palaces, and the 5 brothers were exiled to the wilderness. But Bhishma Dev was always a sincere, sympathetic well-wisher, grandfather, friend, and philosopher to Maharaj Yudhishthira, even up to the last moment of his life. He, Bhishma Dev, died very happily by seeing Maharaj Yudhishthira to the throne. Otherwise, he would have long ago quitted his material body instead of suffering agony over the undue sufferings of the Pandavas. He was simply waiting for the opportune moment because he was sure and certain that the sons of Pandu would come out victorious in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, as his lordship, Sri Krishna, was their protector. As a devotee of the Lord, he knew that the Lord's devotee cannot be vanquished at any time. Maharaj Yudhishthira was quite aware of all these good wishes of Bhishma Dev, and therefore he must have been feeling the great separation. He was sorry for the separation of a great soul and not for the material body which Bhishma Dev relinquished. The funeral ceremony was a necessary duty, although Bhishma Dev was a liberated soul. Since Bhishma Dev was without issue, the eldest grandson, namely Maharaj Yudhishthira, was the rightful person to perform this ceremony. It was a great boon to Bhishma Dev that an equally great son of the family undertook the last rites of a great man. Om Ganatamayandasha Janan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshru Minitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapanantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So again, nice to be here with everyone. We share some thoughts on this very important verse. Of course, the Bhagavatam, every verse is important, but when we study them one at a time, their sweetness manifests. And then oftentimes it's when we read one verse, it's, oh, this verse is so important because we can see so much meaning is there. So a few thoughts on this. It's the first canto. Prabhupada said later that he didn't know how much time he would have. And he put so much, I don't know the word that he used, but so much special emphasis and clarification and nectar insights into the first canto of the Bhagavatam. And of course, we also understand these are the books that Prabhupada brought with him when he crossed the ocean, leaving India to come to America under the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who asked him, please, you preach in the English language. And Prabhupada took that as his mission. If we wanted to spread this around the world, he made the decision to go to New York, although other people had previously attempted to spread Lord Chaitanya's mission in London. Prabhupada could understand time, place, and circumstance. At this point, New York is a more important city, although he sent his disciples pretty soon afterwards, once he established ISKCON in America, to England, to London. He knew that was a very important city also. But he targeted New York. And what did he bring with him? He brought with him the Bhagavatam, that very same literature, that very same purport we're able to read today are the ones Prabhupada thought, if I bring this with me, the movement will be, I can have an impact on what's going on in the world. This was really his plan, that the Bhagavad Purana, the Bhagavatam, what we're reading now, what we're blessed to be able to hear directly from Prabhupada's purports, are the same instructions and wisdom that he felt. He worked for years to prepare this because he knew he couldn't go to the West unless he had something substantial to offer them. And his decision was the Bhagavatam, and he had the first canto and he came. He did the other cantos, published them later. This first canto was there. This was what he brought to the West. And we're reading that today. How fortunate we are to study that. So here we're looking at the passing of Bhishma Dev in this first canto of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam, we know, it's the whole literature, all 12 cantos, is a glorification of the Lord. And it's also a history of the great devotees of the Lord. And it's also a history of kings. It's a history of demons. There's a lot of stories of demons in here, bad people that misuse their power and their independence. And it's also a story of a lot of ordinary people. If you go back through the Bhagavatam, it's a story of a lot of ordinary people. But it's not just a history. It very much is a history. The Purana is sometimes described as being the histories. So the Bhagavad Purana is also a history, but it's a history with a purpose. Just like sometimes people might study history, it's interesting to know what happened in the time of the Romans or in the early kings of India or this or that, or what happened in the globe. It's not just history for the sake of history. Our understanding, the Vaishnava understanding, is by studying these histories, there's a purpose, there's a goal to it, there's a teaching that's there that we want to imbibe, that it purifies us, that it elevates us, and it gives us guidance. So when we read these great literatures, and we read about these great personalities such as Bhishma Dev, we should be thinking, like this expression, what's in it for me? What does it mean to me? Okay, Bhishma Dev acted in this way. Bhishma Dev said this thing. What does that mean for my life? How do I apply that to myself in Naperville thousands of years later? What's the message here? What's the principle that's being explained here that I can apply when I go to work, that I can apply when I get up in the morning to do my sadhana, that I can apply when I'm interacting with my children, that I can apply when I'm making my plans for the day, for the week, for the month, the lessons that are there. So in this verse, there's lots of lessons. And we can see as a history of the Lord and the devotees and the pastimes, the Bhagavatam is explaining and revealing to us the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We've forgotten Krishna. We're confused. We have different experiences, different coverings of material nature. We don't see God face to face. We can see the deity form, but still in our conditioned consciousness, the deity's not talking to us. We know he does that from time to time. Maybe occasionally we feel some guidance from the Lord, but we're certainly not at the level of being aware of Krishna from moment to moment. So he reveals himself in the pages of the Bhagavatam about his nature, his leela, his qualities, his abode, his relationships with his devotees, his mercy. All of these things we learn by studying the Bhagavatam. So we learn about the Lord. We also learn about our relationship with Krishna. We gradually understand I'm not the enjoyer of the world. I'm not the owner of this house. I'm not the master of this wife or this husband. I'm not the proprietor of this business. These things are all coming and going. I was thinking about it the other day. I'm in my mid-60s now, and I was thinking about all the houses I've lived in. I know from those of you from India, sometimes a little different. Sometimes people talk about my house. I remember some friends when I lived in Denver, they talk about my home. And the man lived in Aurora, Colorado for 22 years. But when he would say my home, he's talking about his great-grandfather's house someplace in South India or somewhere like that. But even the great-grandfather's house eventually will go away. It may last longer than the paper and, drywall homes that we live in America these days. Ours have a very short lifespan. And chances are even your drywall home with your, asphalt roof, you're going to move around a few times. So it's very, very transitory, very, very temporary. So this world we're just passing through, but we're learning in the Bhagavatam about a relationship with the Lord, something that lasts. Isn't it people looking for something that lasts? They want to know, how long is a car going to last? How many miles am I going to get out of it? So how long is this relationship going to last? Will you love me till the end of my life? Well, if I put money in this stock, will it last, or is it going to crash like every other one does over some period of time? We're always looking for something that's going to last, something that's permanent. So our relationship with the Lord is that one thing that we actually will last. And also how to act in that relationship. So what's our relationship with the Lord? Who are we? Who's the Lord, first of all? What's our relationship with the Lord, and how do we act in that relationship? How do we live in this world in a day-to-day way? So here in one sense, this is the last scene of the Battle of Kurukshetra. The war's been over for some time, but Bhishma is still lying there on the bed of arrows. You've been reading for days, maybe weeks, these different verses. Bhishma's now laying there on the bed of arrows. This is the last scene. Krishna has come to see him, riding on the chariot with Arjuna, described a few verses before. All of the Pandavas are there. All the great sages of the universe are there, described in a couple verses. Narada Muni's there. I think Vasishta's there. Shonaka, I think. Sukadeva Goswami, I think, is described there. Like great personalities from the universities. Devas are there in the sky, ready to throw flowers, and they're listening to these instructions. This is a big event. Just like I live in Washington, D.C., at some point in the future, they're gonna have an inauguration, and maybe this year they'll cancel. But generally, there's a big parade down, I think, Constitution Avenue, and thousands of people there, and it's a big event. Or like in England, when some royal person gets married, it's a big event, and all the big personalities turn out. So this is a big global, you could say, universal event. His passing is a big deal, and we're reading about it here in this last scene of the Battle of Kurukshetra. So it's the scene, we know it's a horrible situation led up to this. Millions of people have died. There's millions of widows, millions of children are now fatherless. So much suffering is going on. And in one sense, it's thousands of years ago. We understand roughly 5,000 years ago. And the same situation is happening today. It's 5,000 years of a wonderful word they like to use in modern culture, modern progress, the progress of civilization, right? It's 5,000 years later, there's still wars. It's thousands of years later, and just like now, the coronavirus is there. I don't know the global totals, but in America now it's over 230,000 people have died. Some of us are sitting there with with your mask around your neck. You've got to rush out after this call. Or we all have one hanging by the door. You have a couple of them hanging in your car, and everybody's saying, the governor of my state, things have gotten so bad here now, they're rolling back. They were allowing places to be open with 75% occupancy. Now they're saying only 50% occupancy. The county I live, they're saying 25% occupancy. And I read a message from the governor of Maryland the other day. It was like 2 pages. Please do this, please do this, please do this. And at the end, this is not the normal talk of a governor, but to make the point across, he said at the very end, bottom line, he said, quote, wear the damn mask. That was a message from the governor. Like, hey, people, take this seriously. Thousands of people are dying. Our hospitals are too full. We don't have capacity to care for people. This is a serious thing. So as Vaishnavas, yes, it's a serious thing. Corona is a serious thing. We do what we can to protect ourselves and our loved ones. And not only Corona, there's the biggest fires in the history of California going on right now. There's hurricanes. There's tornadoes. There's floods. There's global warming. The economy is in crisis. There's wars going on. It's 5,000 years later, and human society is still struggling, dealing with all these things. Despite so much technological progress, so much, quote, human progress, still some problems there. Recently, a few years ago, they marked the 100th anniversary of World War I. I don't know the exact dates. I think it officially ended in 1918, if correctly. But maybe recently there was something they celebrated, or they noted it, not so much a celebration. And they finally signed the peace accords. But this is roughly right. Just recently, there was the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. So those are big events. But still, there's wars going on. World War I, you might have heard this expression. After World War I, they were referring to this to the war to end all wars. They were all saying, it's too bad, it's too terrible, it's too horrible. We can't do this again. Let's learn from this. But 30 years later, World War II. After that, the Korean War, at least from the American perspective, the Korean War. And after that, the Vietnam War. After that, the war in Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're in other countries, they've been having civil wars going on in so many places at such great cost. So this is a big war that we're reading about, the end of this war. And even sometimes they have what seem to be good wars, right? They have a war on poverty, or they have the war on cancer. We're going to eradicate cancer in this lifetime. Sometimes they make a little progress on these things, and then another disease comes up. You cure cancer and the corona disease comes up. You take care of this, some other things comes up. So thoughtful persons are distressed by this, just like Yudhisthira. He's overwhelmed with grief at the departure of Bhishma Dev. A few verses before, he was overwhelmed with grief, thinking about all these people have died. And in his humility, he's thinking, just to put me on the throne. Before that, in the beginning of the war, Arjuna is overwhelmed with grief. Krishna, I can't fight this war. There's a lot of people going to die. There's a lot of suffering. Women are going to be left without husbands, and the children, and the Vanasamskara, and all these different problems are going to come. Very, very disturbed. And Prabhupada writes in those purposes, in the beginning of the Gita. Of course, Krishna says, Arjuna, you're a fool because you're not thinking spiritually. But Prabhupada also says, very important, because of Arjuna's compassion, he was qualified to hear the Gita. Krishna was ready to give him that spiritual knowledge because he felt in his heart, this is horrible. Does there have to be so much suffering? Is there any other solution to this? Then Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to him. So here, Yudhisthira is very disturbed. And Krishna's arranged this whole exchange between Bhishma and Arjuna to enlighten Yudhisthira, to alleviate his pain. Even Krishna talked to him and tried to give him some knowledge, and he couldn't get it. It didn't sink in. He was still disturbed. So that was Krishna's plan, to glorify Bhishma Dev. They asked, let's go hear from Bhishma. He's your loving grandfather. He's the grandsire of this dynasty. He's a pure devotee. Let's all hear from him and record his departure forever in the histories of the world and in the Bhagavatam and other literatures. So, like Arjuna, Yudhisthira, now at the end of the war, he's lamenting, why so much suffering? Yudhisthira was very concerned. He thought that he was the cause, and he was very disturbed in this. And as I mentioned, that's the quality of a Vaishnava. They don't want to cause suffering, para dukkha dukhi. They don't want to see suffering in the world. They have great compassion. And we should have compassion. We shouldn't just think, okay, I'm a devotee. So the fact that the world, there's political upheavals doesn't affect me. The fact that there's children suffering and women suffering and old people suffering and climate crisis, well, I don't care about these things. That's not the point of being a devotee. A devotee cares about these things, but a devotee knows we need spiritual solutions to ultimately resolve these issues. We need to get to the root cause. You know, that World War I can crush demoniac forces, and World War II, of course, that war was a little, who was the demons in that war was a big discussion. But anyway, a military power can defeat another power in warfare. But then another one comes, and then another one comes. It's the nature of this world. So Bhishma was giving Yudhisthira spiritual perspective. He was advising him, okay, here's a spiritual perspective. And at the same time, he was giving him advice on his occupational duties. As a king, how do you rule? And it describes in some of these verses. He also gave instructions. If you're in a woman's body, what's the best way to be devoted to Krishna? Devotees in general, how do you practice devotional service? How do you practice charity? It explains all these things. Of course, we're just getting very condensed, just a few verses here. But these are the things that were expressed to him. All for what purpose? To alleviate Yudhisthira's suffering and to give him guidance. He gave him so much instruction. And similar themes are there. Similar points are given here as Krishna gives. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Matara Sparsas Tukunteya Shitos na Sukudukada Agama Parinodi just Tams to Tikshvasta Bharata. He explains to them, oh, Arjuna, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and the disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O sign of art, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. One must, Krishna says. It's interesting, just this morning I was listening to a lecture and it was Prabhupada speaking, I think in London. Same verse, 214, Prabhupada said this is a very important verse. Very important verse. Those without knowledge, those in the material concept of life, they're thinking the world is a fair place. And if I just work hard, I can make myself happy. I can alleviate all the distress of this world, and I can make a nice, solid situation for the future generations, and I can die a happy man or happy woman. The Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, in fact, all the Vedic literatures, in fact, all the essential teachings of all the religious traditions of the world say, no, this world is a difficult place. This is a place of suffering for those in the materialistic conception of life. And we see here even Yudhishthira, although a great devotee, he also felt suffering in this world because of the ups and downs of this world. Ups and downs, so much difficulties. There are going to be problems in this world. And so what do we learn from this? Even great personalities have to face so many difficulties. So what to do? Prabhupada explains that while we're living in this world, in these bodies, we can't stop the difficulties that come, but we shouldn't be cold-hearted at the same time. As I mentioned a minute ago, we should feel compassion for others. We should be conscious of our own situations. We cannot take away all the difficulties of life, but we should use our intelligence to minimize those. Just like if it's cold outside, we all know, you're all living in northern Illinois, most of you, winter's coming. I don't know what the temperature is there now. I'm in Maryland. I'm looking out my window and it's a pretty cold, blustery day out there. So you put a jacket on. It's not that you think, okay, I'm not this body, so I don't put a jacket on. Or I'm not this body, I don't have to go to work to feed my family. Or I'm not this body, I don't have to be attentive and, be a good citizen. And, you get pulled over by a policeman. Sir, you're driving on the wrong side of the road and you just drove through a red light. Officer, don't you understand that we're not these bodies and this material doesn't matter? Who's going to say that to a policeman, right? When it comes time to pay your taxes, do you just write across the sheet, Dear IRS, I'm not of this world. You're not the government. You're actually an illusion. You should understand you're Krishna's servant. I'm Krishna's servant, so stop harassing me for money. I'm using my money to serve the Lord. I don't think that's going to go over very well. So Bhishma, he's giving Yudhishthira instructions, both how to focus on Krishna and how to live in this world. How you can live in this world, focus on Krishna. That's the Vaishnava salve for the sufferings and the difficulties and the challenges of this world. Live in this world, in a sense, do the best we can, but as Prabhupada says over and over and over, live simply. The message for the Vaishnavas of the Bhagavatam, live simply. Don't over-endeavor for mundane things that are difficult to achieve, but actually learn to live simply, but then perform our duties, be good mothers, be good fathers, go to work on time, encourage your kids to get good grades in school, wear your mask during the coronavirus. This body's a gift of God. Don't take chances with it. And at the same time, do the best we can, but we know difficulties are going to be there. I've heard the example given, I think maybe Prabhupada himself gave this example. If there's some big storm coming, like a hurricane, people go outside and they prepare everything. You put the lawn furniture inside. You see pictures, people putting the boards up over their windows. You do the necessary things you can. Sometimes they even evacuate. You do the best you can. And at the same time, most importantly, you depend upon Krishna. So there's reasonableness in our Vaishnava philosophy. So depend upon God. So here we see Bhishma, such a great soul. Even he had to undergo so many difficulties, so many calamities, but he patiently waited for and depended upon the Lord's mercy. It's described interestingly here. I'll read from the verse again, from the purport. He died very happily by seeing Maharaj Yudhishthira to the throne. Otherwise, he would have long ago quitted his material body. instead of suffering agony over the undue sufferings of the Pandavas. In other words, if he had no hope, why even live? We see sometimes it's very sad in the world, sometimes a lot of suicides in the world. People don't have much hope. Material illusion is so strong. Even sometimes Vaishnavas, they become overwhelmed by the pressures of the mind and the material difficulties, and their intelligence becomes clouded. Very sad. Even sometimes Vaishnavas, they struggle with this, and they give up hope and they take their lives. Very sad. So here's described. Bhishma was simply waiting for the opportune moment because he was sure and certain that the sons of Pandu would come out victorious in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, as his lordship Sri Krishna was their protector. A devotee of the Lord, he knew, as a devotee of the Lord, he knew that the Lord's devotee cannot be vanquished at any time. So what did Bhishma wanted to achieve? He wanted to see Yudhishthira was on the throne. Why? Because he knew that was good for everyone. Yudhishthira didn't need the throne. Yudhishthira was happy. When they were banished 11 years, Yudhishthira was very happy. You know, some of you, the story. Bhima was saying, let's go back and fight now. This is not righteous. Yudhishthira was like, Bhima, it's kind of nice here in the forest. You know, things are kind of peaceful here. You know, God's put us here. No, maybe we should. And I think it's described that some of the brothers are starting to think that Yudhishthira likes it too much here. He may never go back. But of course he did because he knew it was his duty. But for himself, he was happy to stay in the forest. But he took up his responsibility for the benefit of others. So what are the lessons for us? We're not warriors, most of us. We're certainly not living in the time of Bhishma and Yudhishthira. What's the relevance? So a few thoughts on that. One, don't be fooled by the allurements of this material world. You know, some of us, we drive I don't know what the models are these days. You know, some of us, maybe we drive a Volkswagen, but, you know, our minds thinking, I know, here's the hierarchy. I heard this from Venkat Tabato one time, was telling me about when he grew up. His family drove a Corolla. I think Corolla is kind of the lower Toyota. And he said, as a young guy, he was thinking, oh, my friends have Camrys. That family has a Camry. I think that's a little higher up the hierarchy of cars. So the mind's thinking, okay, I got a nice new Corolla. What I really need is a Camry. But then you get a Camry, then the mind's thinking, isn't it? All of you, you have your own categories. Maybe you're not so into cars, think of some other thing. Oh, now I have a Camry. What I really need is a Lexus. And you're driving home in your brand new Lexus from the dealership. Some person pulls up at the stoplight next to you. He's got a Tesla or a Porsche or something. And then the immediate mind goes, oh, what I really need is that. Or you have a 2-bedroom house, the mind says, oh, a 3-bedroom house. Then you struggle hard to get that mortgage together. Oh, actually, this is nice, but it should be over there. It should be in this neighborhood, not that neighborhood, etc. It's unlimited. The mind's desires are never satisfied. So don't be fooled by the allurements of the material world. That's one of the lessons that's here. We know Prabhupada describes you can be in a first-class prison cell or a fourth-class prison cell. You're still in the prison. It's such a simple analogy, but it's important that we take it into our heart and we tell our brain, my dear brain, I don't need a 5-bedroom house. I'm quite good with a 4-bedroom house. Please be quiet. Spend your time chanting Hare Krishna. That's what we should be focusing on, because whether it's a 5-bedroom house or a 55-bedroom house, we're going to be kicked out of this place sooner or later. So let's get ready now for what's more important. So don't be fooled by the allurements. Live simply. Second point, live simply. Use our time serving Krishna, cultivating knowledge, cultivating awareness, cultivating a relationship with Krishna. Be focused. Have a vision. Have a vision. This instruction that's coming out from these instructions from Yudhishthira and Bhishma. And to tolerate, just like Bhishma is saying to the Pandavas, you suffered so much. Bhishma himself, when we read the Mahabharata, Bhishma suffered so much from the very beginning of his life up to the end. He's lying on a bed of arrows, but he's seen, oh, this is Krishna's arrangement. This is wonderful. And just see how the Lord has appeared before me out of his causeless mercy. And he shares what wisdom he has with Yudhishthira. And he's so happy that even in the midst of all these turmoils, Yudhishthira is there to try to help promote God consciousness as a righteous king. So don't be fooled by the allurements. Live simply, use our time to serve Krishna, cultivate our relationship, tolerate the sukha and dukkha that comes, and know that the Lord will help us. Prabhupada comments several times, every one step we take towards Krishna, he takes 10 steps towards us. That's the nature of Krishna. Prabhupada says that he explains Krishna uses this expression, he's our most intimate friend. He says that in the first canto also. Krishna is the most intimate friend. And in the Gita, very important verses, just to flip there, the Lord himself says, I'll just read the English, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. He says, if you're constantly devoted, if we worship him with love, we may not have much love, but a little bit of love, a little bit of appreciation, a little bit of gratitude. If we don't have love, we can have affection. If we don't have affection, at least we can have some gratitude. If we don't have gratitude, we can think, where would I be without the air? Where would I be if the sun doesn't come up today? Where would I be if there's no food? Somehow out of the earth, the trees come and the fruits come and the flowers come and the vegetables come. Where would I be without those things? Which of us can, go to work today and produce some food in your office? And see, can you produce food in your office? No, you can do it in the fields. But go in the fields and produce food without seed. So who gave us the seeds? Who gave us the field? Who gave us the sun? Who gave us the water? At least there we can start, oh, God, thank you for that. From that little beginning, little bit of appreciation, the love will gradually come. And Krishna says, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling within their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness of ignorance. So Krishna is such a wonderful friend. He's helping us. He wants to help. And our responsibility is to cultivate a relationship with him. We're practitioners of bhakti yoga. There's other yoga processes that are also great. There's other religious systems that are also very good. We are especially blessed to understand the absolute supreme of God is the personality of God is a person. It's a supreme person, the all attractive supreme person, and that he's residing in our hearts, that he's our that deliver us. And we can see even great souls like Bhishma and Yudhishthira, such great souls, even they had in life. So when we life, we can remember them, we can see their example, we can take inspiration and strength from them, and try to develop the same type of determination and vision that they had. And if we do so, I'll just end with one of my expressions of Srila Prabhupada. He said, just become Krishna conscious and enjoy life with a thrill at every moment. So even in the middle of the difficulties, life becomes a thrill and highly pleasurable. And even in some way, difficulties themselves actually, of course, they're blessings in one way because they help us become detached. They help in many ways. They help us become detached. They help spur us on towards a relationship with Krishna. And in one sense too, also, like they say, sometimes you have people that are fair weather friends, right? You go, you become rich, you got all the friends in the world. They say they come out of the, I always send people, you win the lottery, just see how many friends you'll have the next day, right? Your business goes bankrupt, see who's left. Because in those times of difficulty, we see who our real friends are. The people that call you the morning after the crisis, those are the friends, not the people that call you after the victory. Those people may also be friends, but the ones that stick with us through thick and thin, those are our friends. So Krishna is such a friend. And we can demonstrate at least the beginning of our affection to Krishna when we're in difficulty. And sometimes we pray, Krishna, I don't know where this is coming from, but I know ultimately, as Prabhupada says, I deserve more. So many sins, so many offenses from this lifetime, past lifetimes. Who knows how much damage I've done, how much pain I've caused, how many people I've injured. So whatever is there, by your grace, I know it's minimized. And please let me, in the middle of this difficulty, remember you. And we should think in our hearts, now's the chance to really show Krishna. I'm not just here because things are going good. Thank you, God. That's also nice. Thank you, God. And that increases our devotion. But when things are tough, Krishna, I still want to serve you. I still want to serve you. The friend that calls you that's a true friend. We want to be such a friend to Krishna. That even when things are tough, we're devoted to Krishna, we're doing our best. And that deeply endears the Lord to us, which is our goal in life. We want to reconnect with Krishna in that mood of genuine service and affection. So thank you all for listening. I can't say attentively because I have no idea, because I'm just seeing names on the screen. I'm not sure. I hope I know one or two. I can see Amrita Kelly's listening very attentively. She's so generous. She's even smiling when I say something humorous. Thank you. And the rest of you, you're kind of frozen in space, but hopefully, even if you weren't so attentive, hopefully I said a couple of things that you found valuable. And we've got about maybe 10, 12 minutes if there's some questions. Prabhu, do we put those in the chat box, or how do you
They will
normally do
say,
that?
Prabhu, devotees will ask. Unmuted.
Okay. So any questions or comments, please?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Vamsidhari Das Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Please accept my Prabhu.
I just want to say that you said that when we take one step to Krishna, Krishna takes 10 steps. That is very inspiring. In the sense, like we usually step, but it is inspiring that Krishna is taking 10 steps. So thank you very much for reinforcing the affection for Krishna in that manner, bro. Thank you, bro.
Thank you. That's Prabhupada revealing his own insights, and the Shastra, of course, revealing, these great devotees are telling us their experience of the Lord. Yes. Are there any other questions or comments one would like to share?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's such a wonderful thing to begin our day of Govardhan Puja. And this text somehow was very related, so it's very amazing how to deepen our shelter. Two things particularly were very touching, Prabhu, as you mentioned. You brought this point, how Srila Prabhupada brought these Bhagavatam, and the same purports we have the opportunity to read. I mean, that's just the way you have presented, seeing in that perspective, just touched the heart very deeply. And the last point you mentioned about the gratitude, so somehow I was connecting those 2 points. It's just so amazing what the opportunity we have. And as Vamshidhari Prabhu is mentioning, these are 10 or 100 steps from Krishna that he is really providing us in spite of, the whatever struggles we're going through. Just want to hear a little bit more on this Yudhishthira's grief, Prabhu. We have heard he was overtaken by that. Of course, it's a little different context where he was feeling he is guilty, and now probably he's feeling sad for Bhishmadeva's departure. But he has heard all that and he knows his duty, but still he's going through that grief. So just want to hear a little more from you. I was particularly thinking of application for us. It may not be directly connecting, but we hear this and very inspiring, and for a few days or a few weeks we continue, and then go back again to, oh, not like this, I'm not this, I'm not that, that kind of a thing keeps happening. So as when I heard Yudhishthira Maharaj was going through, I was that struck me. So just would like to hear a few more thoughts from you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a beautiful thought and a beautiful question. Well, it's interesting. I think of in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is overwhelmed, drops his bow, he's crying. Krishna teaches the Bhagavad Gita. And then again, we read the Mahabharata, there's at least one, maybe a couple times later, he kind of gets bewildered again. He has to kind of recharge his batteries. And we see here with Yudhishthira, he was so disturbed. Krishna tried to talk to him. Everyone tried to console him. It wasn't possible to do. Then he went and he heard from Bhishma. Bhishma gave us instructions, and that pain was relieved. But now Bhishma's leaving. So now that pain is there. And, there are a few different things. One, I think it demonstrates that, again, our philosophy is one realizing the perfect form. You know, the Greek philosophers, as I understand it, spend a lot of time trying to understand what's the perfect form. I don't know the particular language or terms they would use. You know, so what's the perfection? Of course, another philosophy would say the perfection is nihilism. Nothing is valuable. Nothing is, everything goes away. Our philosophy teaches that everything that we experience is in a perverted form or in a reflected form or in an impure form of a temporary form of the original. So we want to experience the original. So these feelings of grief, I mean, even we know in the 10th canto, much later, and he talks about the gopis' grief upon being set, and now the gopis experiencing, tears and feeling great. I don't know if the word grief is used. I can't remember the exact word. They're pained by the thought of Krishna walking on the thorns in the forest. So, and I have no realization of this. I only hear about it, but somehow that even, pain, and we hear about it here, the painfulness, grief, these things actually have original pure spiritual manifestation, which now we can only kind of theorize. But it's not that we want to get rid of emotions, we purify emotions. Sometimes I know, sometimes when I genuinely feel in my heart, I wish I could just merge. I don't want to be. And Prabhupada writes about it in the Bhagavad Gita. It says sometimes people in material life's too difficult. They just want to become impersonalists. Sometimes I feel that urge, but by the grace of Prabhupada, I'd probably go that way. But, my Guru Maharaj has uplifted me, our founder Acharya, and he's given us a vision of, no, you don't do that. That's a terrible choice. But as difficult as these personal relationships and emotion and feeling, as difficult as they are in this world, know they have a perfected existence and relationship with Krishna. And as we build our relationship with Krishna, those experiences start becoming so important. Whatever difficulties on the material world become less and less significant in our lives, to the point that Bhishma, an example, he's lying on a bed of arrows, okay? Floor the other day, and by Krishna's grace, I saw it before I stepped on it, but I've stepped on a few pins in my life. I'm sure you all have stepped on a pin in your life. Not a nice experience. What to speak of an arrow? What to speak of a bed of arrows? Now, Bhishma's a transcendentalist. He's a warrior. He's tough, but we shouldn't think that wasn't difficult. When Arjuna had to be in that fight, we shouldn't think it wasn't difficult. When Prabhupada crossed the ocean and had heart attacks, we shouldn't think it wasn't difficult. When he was gored by a cow in Delhi, that, it's not that these great personalities don't experience these challenges, but they rise above it because their experience of their Krishna consciousness is greater. Just like, like a mother, example of this one comes to my mind. It may be very, very difficult. She's worked hard all day. This sick, the baby cries, she gets up, she takes care of that child. In some ways, she doesn't even notice whatever difficulty she has because of the child. Her affection for the child is so deep, her sense of duty to the child. The husband, oftentimes these days, the wife, you go to work, even, and you're in Illinois. These days we won't because of COVID, but there's 8 inches of work. You figure out how to get there because these other things are minimized because of your vision. So that's the vision we're trying to cultivate in our Krishna consciousness. And when we do so, the ups and downs of this world they don't affect us so much. And probably gives example, if you're in a boat in the ocean may be, down with the waves, but if it's a solid boat, you go up, you go down, you go up, you get thrown this way, that way. Okay, it's a little uncomfortable, but you're in the boat. So when we're in Krishna consciousness, when our consciousness is fixed in our relation with Krishna, the orders of the spiritual master, understanding our duties as Vaishnavas, these things, they come, they go, but they don't throw us out of the boat. We stay in the boat and we're protected. Is that helpful? Is that okay?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Very, very inspiring and profound. Thank you.
So we got a few minutes left. Another question anyone have? If there's none, I'd like to read one final thing, which is a couple paragraphs, an excerpt from a beautiful article This is from the Journal of Vaishnav Studies. We did a special volume, number 20. This was just about 8 years ago. The Vaishnav dialogues that we've been having in Washington, D.C. for almost 25 years now, every year. And Gopal Hari Prabhu, Gopal Gupta, Radhika Ram Prabhu's brother, younger brother, actually Radhika co-authored this. They wrote an article on Vaishnav theodicy. Theodicy means the question of evil. Why is there evil in the world? You know, philosophers struggle with this, religious people struggle with this. Our Vaishnava acharyas also write about this. And he specifically talks about this chapter of Bhishma Dev in this article about the problem of evil. So I like to read. This is his very, very conclusion. He writes, the Bhagavatam urges its readers to see the soul's envelopment in matter is a temporal and temporary experience with a beginning and an end, which undergoes only once as a necessary step in its spiritual evolution. Of course, many lifetimes, only once in terms of this progress. When the soul remembers its eternal relationship with the Lord, takes refuge in him, it gains the greatest freedom, even in suffering, and after death returns to its original home beyond matter. Thus, the Bhagavad Purana presents a message of hope, a message we find in the metaphor of the merchant caravan. He was giving an early analogy that's there that you can look that up. If you read the whole article, you hear about that other story from the Bhagavatam. We find in the metaphor the merchant caravan and in Kunti Devi's prayers to Krishna, though calamities may befall us at any moment, quote, the sight of Krishna will occur, ending the repetition of worldly existence. And that's some 1:825 Bhagavatam. Indeed, even after being shot with dozens of arrows and seeing his entire dynasty destroyed, the Bhagavat portrays Bhishma as being undeterred in his devotion to Krishna, for Krishna. Quote, O protector of the earth, Yudhishthira, look at his compassion on his staunch devotees, that Krishna himself has appeared before me when I'm giving up my life. 1:922, the same chapter we're reading just a few verses before. Bhishma's sentiment is indicative of the Bhagavat's overall response to the problem of suffering. To celebrate, quote, devotional heroism, a term that another devotee scholar had used, the facing and conquering of unavoidable suffering through intensified devotion. So we're all meant to follow in Bhishma's footsteps and be devotional heroes. You're all heroes. Sometimes you may feel you're losing the battle, but if we keep our shelter at the Lord's feet, you are devotional heroes by facing and conquering the unavoidable suffering through intensified devotion. So, profound topic, beautiful verses. Wonderful to have all of your association. And my phone's going to ring any second, I think, or maybe I'm supposed to link in with another call. And it just turned to 9 on my screen. So thank you all very, very much. Have a wonderful day, remembering the Lord and his Govardhan Leela. Wish you all a happy Diwali weekend also. And may this year be one of continued progress in your spiritual life. I pray that Krishna will keep you all healthy and happy in his service, and whatever challenge that your family or loved ones or friends may face, I pray that you all will be inspired more and more to be devotional, and even in the face of those difficulties, increase dependence in your connection with Krishna. Okay, thank you so very much. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much,
Jai
Prabhu.
Shri Prabhupada. Jai Bhishma.
Thank you so much,
Jai
Prabhu,
Yudhishthira. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
for taking time out from your busy schedule, Prabhu. Thank you for giving this class to us. As always, it's very nice to hear from you. Wonderful class on how to be grateful, live simple and be contented, and be focused on the goal, and not to get diverted. And please, whenever possible, please give us more classes, Prabhu, in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd love to do so. And I'll just go back real quickly to Amrita Kelly's point. we hear these things, we get inspired, but then material waves come in again. We kind of lose our focus. That's why we have to be chanting and hearing and associating on a regular basis. Material energy is very powerful. It's like a disease, right? It's like when winter comes in Illinois, okay? It's not like, okay, I wore a coat yesterday, I don't have to wear it today. No, you have to wear a coat every day. Throughout the winter, you need a coat. So hearing and chanting, associating with devotees, honoring prasad, thinking about Krishna every day in and day out. Okay? Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.